The legend of the Kingdom of Hyrule begins not with the kings or the heroes, but with the ancient and primordial labor of the three golden goddesses who descended from the heavens to shape the world from a formless void. Din, the goddess of power, used her strong flaming arms to cultivate the land and create the Red Earth. Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, poured her spirit onto the earth to give the spirit of law to the world. Faror, the goddess of courage, produced all life forms who would uphold that law. When their labor was complete, the goddesses departed for the heavens, leaving behind a symbol of their strength, the Triforce. This golden relic, representing the balance of power, wisdom, and courage, was placed in the sacred realm, a parallel dimension that mirrors the heart of whoever enters it. The Triforce does not judge between good and evil. It simply grants the wish of the one who touches it. To protect this power, the ancient sages built the Temple of Time, sealing the entrance to the sacred realm behind the Door of Time, which could only be opened by one who possessed the three spiritual stones and the legendary Ocarina of Time. For centuries, this balance held, but the peace of Hyrule was eventually shattered by a brutal and bloody civil war. It was during the final, desperate days of this conflict that a mortally wounded Hylian mother fled into the forbidden Kokiri forest, a place where no outsider was supposed to survive. With her last breath, she entrusted her infant son to the great Deku Tree, the guardian spirit of the woods. Sensing the child's destiny and the purity of his spirit, the Deku Tree accepted him. The boy, named Link, was raised as a Kokiri, the eternal children of the forest who never age. However, Link was always an outsider. Unlike every other Kokiri, he was not granted a guardian fairy, leading to years of isolation and bullying. He grew up in a world of perpetual childhood, unaware that his true heritage was that of the Hylian Knights and that his destiny was tied to the fate of the entire world. 10 years later, the shadow of a new threat began to crawl across the land. A wicked man from the western desert, Ganondorf, the king of the Gerudo thieves, sought to claim the Triforce for himself. Knowing that the spiritual stone of the forest was held by the great Deku Tree, Ganondorf demanded the jewel. When the guardian spirit refused to surrender it, Ganondorf placed a parasitic death curse upon the ancient tree. As the Deku Tree began to wither from within, he knew the time had come for the hero to awaken. He summoned the fairy Navi and sent her to find the boy without a fairy. Navi found Link asleep in his treehouse, and her arrival marked the end of his innocence. She guided him to the great Deku Tree, who tasked the young boy with entering his massive, hollow trunk to break the curse and purge the evil dwelling inside. Link ventured into the dark, web-choked corridors of the tree, battling the Queen Goma, a manifestation of Ganondorf's dark magic. Though Link was victorious, the victory was hollow. The great Deku Tree's death was inevitable. Before passing into the Great Silence, the spirit bestowed the Kokiri's emerald, the spiritual stone of the forest, upon Link. He gave the boy a final, heavy command: travel to Hyrule Castle and find the Princess of Destiny. As the great Deku Tree breathed his last, the forest began to lose its vitality. Link, burdened by a grief he was too young to fully understand, prepared to leave the only home he had ever known. At the bridge leading out of the forest, his childhood friend Saria waited for him. In a moment of quiet, heartbreaking goodbye, she gave him her fairy ocarina, a token of their bond. Link turned away and ran toward the horizon, crossing the threshold into the vast, unknown world of Hyrule. Upon reaching the bustling Hyrule Castle town, Link witnessed the majesty and the hidden rot of the kingdom. While the people celebrated in the streets, the shadow of the Gerudo king loomed over the palace. Link managed to infiltrate the castle gardens, evading the royal guards until he reached the courtyard. There, he encountered Princess Zelda. Unlike her father, the king of Hyrule, who was blinded by Ganondorf's false oaths of loyalty, Zelda possessed the blood of the goddess, prophetic dreams that warned her of a dark cloud swallowing the land. She had seen Link in her visions as a ray of light from the forest. Together, the two children formed a secret pact to stop Ganondorf before he could reach the sacred realm. Zelda believed that if they gathered the remaining 2 spiritual stones, they could claim the Triforce themselves and use its power to protect the kingdom. This mission took Link to the volcanic heights of Death Mountain, the home of the rock-eating Gorons. He found the mountain's entrance blocked and the Gorons starving because Ganondorf had sealed their food source, the Dodongo's cavern, after they refused to hand over their spiritual stone. Link befriended Darunia, the hot-blooded leader of the Gorons, by playing Saria's song, a melody that reminded the chieftain of the joy of the forest. To prove his courage, Link entered the cavern and slew the King Dodongo, reopening the mine. In a show of brotherhood, Darunia gave Link the Goron's ruby, the spiritual stone of fire. The bond between the Hylian boy and the mountain people was sealed in stone, but the urgency of Zelda's prophecy allowed no time for rest. Link's journey then led him to the watery depths of Zora's domain. There, he found the King Zora in a state of panic because his daughter, Princess Ruto, had disappeared inside the belly of the giant guardian deity, Lord Jabu Jabu. After retrieving a message in a bottle, Link realized that Ganondorf's influence had even reached the depths of the water. Jabu Jabu had been poisoned and turned aggressive. Link allowed himself to be swallowed by the deity, where he found the headstrong Princess Ruto. Together, they navigated the strange, organic interior of the creature, eventually defeating the parasitic monster Baronade. In gratitude, and as a misplaced engagement ring that Link did not fully understand, Ruto gave him the Zora's Sapphire, the spiritual stone of water. With all three stones in his possession, Link returned to Hyrule Castle, believing the mission was a success. However, as he approached the drawbridge, a violent storm broke over the city. The gates burst open, and Zelda fled on horseback with her protector, Impa. As they galloped past, Zelda threw a heavy, cold object into the castle moat, the Ocarina of Time. Moments later, Ganondorf himself emerged on a black steed, his eyes burning with a terrifying, triumphant malice. He mocked the young boy standing in his way before riding off in pursuit of the princess. Link retrieved the ocarina from the water and heard Zelda's voice in his mind, teaching him the Song of Time. He hurried to the Temple of Time and played the melody. The spiritual stones took their places on the altar, and the massive door of time groaned open, revealing the legendary Master Sword resting in its pedestal. Link approached the sword, believing it to be the final key to defeating Ganondorf. But the Master Sword was more than a weapon. It was the blade of evil's bane, and Link was too young to wield its power. When he pulled the sword from the stone, he inadvertently broke the final seal on the sacred realm. Ganondorf, who had followed Link in secret, stepped into the light, laughing as he entered the portal to the Triforce. The sacred realm, reflecting Ganondorf's wicked heart, was instantly transformed into a world of monsters. Link's soul was sealed away in the Chamber of Sages, held in a magical stasis for 7 long years until he was old enough to become the hero of time. This was the moment the world fell. The innocence of the child was sacrificed for the survival of the man, and the Kingdom of Hyrule entered its darkest age. The awakening of the hero of time occurred not in a world of light, but in the sterile, golden glow of the Chamber of Sages, located at the very center of the sacred realm. For 7 years, Link's spirit had remained in a deep slumber, while his body grew to match the power of the blade he had drawn. When his eyes finally opened, he was met by the ethereal gaze of Roru, the ancient sage of light. Roru explained the devastating truth of what had occurred while Link slept. By pulling the Master Sword, Link had inadvertently provided Ganondorf with the key to the sacred realm. The King of Thieves had touched the Triforce, but because his heart was out of balance, the relic had shattered into 3 pieces. Ganondorf retained only the Triforce of power, while the pieces of wisdom and courage sought out those chosen by destiny. Despite possessing only a fragment, the power was enough for Ganondorf to crown himself the great king of evil and transform the once verdant Hyrule into a land of perpetual shadow. Link looked at his hands and saw they were no longer those of a child. He had become a young man, a warrior forged by time itself. Roru bestowed upon him the Light Medallion, a symbol of the sage's power, and sent him back to the physical world. When Link stepped out of the Temple of Time, the sight that greeted him was a nightmare. the vibrant market of his childhood was gone, replaced by a ghost town of ruined stone and wandering reeds, shambling, screaming undead that froze the blood of any who heard them. The sky was a bruised, sickly purple, and a great ring of fire swirled around the summit of Death Mountain. Hyrule Castle, once a symbol of hope, had been demolished, and in its place floated Ganon's castle, suspended over a pit of molten lava by dark magic. The world was dying, and the people Link had known were either in hiding, enslaved, or dead. As Link stood amidst the ruins, a mysterious figure emerged from the shadows. Clad in the wrappings of the Sheikah, the legendary protectors of the royal family, the stranger introduced himself as Sheik. With a voice like the rustling of dry leaves, Sheik informed Link that to reclaim the land, he must awaken the 5 remaining sages who slumbered in hidden temples across Hyrule. These temples had been cursed by Ganondorf's influence, and only the hero of time could purge the evil within them. Before departing, Sheik taught Link the Minuet of Forest, a song that would allow him to warp through the fabric of space to the Kokiri forest. Link realized that his first task was to return to his childhood home, though he feared what he would find in a forest that had lost its guardian 7 years prior. Returning to the Kokiri forest was a surreal and painful experience. The Kokiri, who never age, still looked like children, but their spirits were broken. The forest was overrun with aggressive monsters, and the great Deku Tree's meadow was silent and cold. Link learned that his childhood friend Saria had felt a call from the forest temple deep within the Lost Woods and had gone there to investigate, but she had never returned. Driven by a need to protect the only person who had ever truly accepted him, Link ventured into the deep fog of the woods. He found the forest temple, not a place of nature, but a haunted, twisted mansion filled with the ghosts of the past. The architecture itself was warped, with hallways that twisted at impossible angles and portraits that watched his every move. Inside the temple, Link faced the Phantom Ganon, a spectral horseman created by Ganondorf to guard the forest's power. The battle was a test of Link's newfound strength and his mastery of the bow. When the Phantom was finally dispelled, the voice of Saria echoed through the chamber. She had awakened as the Sage of Forest. In a poignant moment across the Veil of Dimensions, Saria admitted that as a sage, she could no longer live in the world of the Kokiri. She belonged now to the sacred realm. She bestowed the Forest Medallion upon Link, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and eternal sorrow. With the forest purged of evil, a new sprout, the Deku Tree Sprout, emerged from the earth, signaling that life would eventually return to the woods. The sprout also revealed the truth Link had long suspected. He was not a Kokiri, but a Hylian, which explained why he had grown while his friends remained children. Link's path then led him back to the fiery slopes of Death Mountain. The Gorons had all but vanished, and the entrance to the fire temple within the crater was guarded by a terrifying dragon named Volvagia, resurrected by Ganondorf to consume the Goron race as a warning to all who resisted his rule. Link found his old friend Darunia, who was preparing to face the beast alone to save his people. Link followed the Goron leader into the heart of the volcano, navigating a landscape of shifting lava and falling boulders. The Fire Temple was a monument to the Gorons' ancient history, now turned into a prison. Link freed the captured Gorons and eventually confronted the dragon Volvagia in a battle of fire and steel. Upon the dragon's defeat, Darunia awakened as the Sage of Fire, bestowing the Fire Medallion and swearing an eternal brotherhood that transcended time. Despite these victories, the weight of the era was heavy on Link's soul. He traveled to Zora's domain, only to find it completely frozen in red ice that could not be melted by normal fire. The Zora people were trapped beneath the frozen waves, and the once mighty waterfall was silent. Following a trail of ice, Link discovered the ice cavern, where he obtained the iron boots. He then descended into the depths of Lake Hylia, which had nearly dried up due to the curse on the water temple. Inside the temple, Link faced his most difficult psychological challenge: Dark Link. In a room that appeared to be a vast, shallow ocean under an infinite sky, Link had to fight a shadow of himself, a reflection of his own fears, his own fatigue, and the darkness that threatened to consume him the longer he stayed in this ruined world. By defeating his shadow, Link found the strength to reach the heart of the temple and slay Morpha, the amoebic beast that was draining the lake's vitality. Princess Ruto, now a mature and regal figure, awakened as the Sage of Water. She gave him the water medallion, though she lamented that her engagement to Link would have to wait until their duties to Hyrule were complete. As the water returned to Lake Hylia, Link stood on the shore, watching the sunrise. He had awakened 3 sages, but the most difficult trials lay ahead in the shadows of the graveyard and the blistering heat of the desert. The hero of time was no longer just a legend being told. He was a living symbol of resistance against a king who thought he had already won. As Part 2 concludes, the midpoint of the war for Hyrule's soul has been reached. Link has transitioned from the nostalgia of the forest to the harsh realities of a kingdom under siege. He has learned that being a hero is not just about strength, but about the willingness to lose the people you love to a higher calling. The Master Sword hums in his hand, a constant reminder of the 7 years he lost and the future he is fighting to reclaim. The shadow of Ganondorf remains vast, but for the first time in 7 years, the people of Hyrule have seen a glimmer of light in the distance. The drums of the desert are calling, and the secrets of the Sheikah are about to be revealed. The quest to awaken the sages took a darker, more personal turn as Link traveled to Kokiri village, the last refuge for the displaced citizens of Hyrule. The village, originally founded by the Sheikah, was suddenly set ablaze by an invisible, malevolent force that had escaped from the bottom of the well. Link arrived to find Sheik struggling against a phantom of pure shadow. This entity, the Shadow Beast, retreated into the depths of the Shadow Temple, located behind the village graveyard. Sheik taught Link the Nocturne of Shadow, explaining that the history of Hyrule was not just one of golden light, but also of blood and greed. The Shadow Temple was a grim reminder of this truth. It was a hidden chamber of horrors where the enemies of the royal family were interrogated and executed in ages past. It was a place where the truth was hidden behind illusions, requiring Link to use the lens of truth to see the hidden blades and bottomless pits that guarded the temple's secrets. The interior of the Shadow Temple was a descent into a literal and metaphorical underworld. Link moved through rooms filled with spinning scythes, guillotines, and the rhythmic beating of invisible drums. The walls were lined with the skulls of those forgotten by history, and the atmosphere was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient rot. At the heart of this darkness, Link faced Bongo Bongo, a massive, disembodied shadow spirit with severed hands that beat upon a gargantuan drum. The battle was a chaotic struggle for balance in a world that refused to stay still. Upon the beast's destruction, Impa, the guardian of Princess Zelda and the last of the Sheikah, awakened as the Sage of Shadow. She revealed that her role had always been to protect the royal family from the shadows, both external and internal. She bestowed the Shadow Medallion upon Link, her voice firm with the resolve of a warrior who had finally fulfilled her duty. With only one sage left to awaken, Link turned his gaze toward the Gerudo Desert in the far west. To reach the final temple, he had to infiltrate the Gerudo's fortress, a sandstone stronghold inhabited only by women. The Gerudo were skilled warriors who had remained loyal to Ganondorf, but Link's prowess in combat and his ability to move unseen eventually earned him the respect of the Gerudo guards. They granted him a membership card, identifying him as an honorary member of their tribe, which allowed him to pass into the haunted wasteland. Guided by a ghost and battling through a relentless sandstorm, Link reached the Desert Colossus, a massive statue carved into the side of a mountain. This was the entrance to the Spirit Temple, a site of worship for the Gerudo long before Ganondorf's corruption. The Spirit Temple presented a unique challenge. It required the cooperation of both the past and the present. Link discovered that he could not explore the entirety of the temple as an adult. He had to return to the Temple of Time, place the Master Sword back in its pedestal, and travel back 7 years to his childhood. As a boy, Link met Nabooru, a high-ranking Gerudo thief who despised Ganondorf's cruelty and sought to steal the silver gauntlets to undermine his power. Link agreed to help her, crawling through small passages that his adult body could not fit. However, after retrieving the gauntlets, he witnessed Nabooru being kidnapped by 2 twin witches, Kum and Kotake, the surrogate mothers of Ganondorf. This event solidified Link's resolve. He returned to the future, donned the gauntlets as an adult, and pushed back the massive stone blocks that barred his path to the temple's inner sanctum. The Spirit Temple was a bridge between the light of the sun and the shadows of the soul. It was filled with mirrors that Link had to manipulate to reflect light into the darkest corners of the ruins. The final trial was a battle against the witches themselves, Twinrova. They attacked with opposing forces of fire and ice, forcing Link to use his mirror shield to absorb one element and reflect it back at the other. When the sisters merged into their true form, Link had to demonstrate perfect timing to turn their own elemental power against them. Upon their defeat, Nabooru awakened as the Sage of Spirit. She admitted that she had been brainwashed by the witches for years, and thanked Link for freeing her soul. She gave him the Spirit Medallion, completing the circle of the 6 sages. With all the medallions in his possession, Link returned to the Temple of Time to meet Sheik for the final time. As the light of the setting sun filtered through the stained glass windows, Sheik revealed the final piece of the prophecy. He spoke of the Triforces shattering 7 years ago. Ganondorf held power, the chosen hero held courage, and the third piece, the Triforce of Wisdom, was held by the 7th Sage, who acted as the leader of them all. In a flash of golden light, Sheik's form shifted and changed. The Sheikah wrappings fell away, and the short hair lengthened. Standing before Link was Princess Zelda, who had been in hiding for 7 years, disguised as a boy to evade Ganondorf's scouts. She apologized for the burden she had placed on Link's shoulders and gave him the light arrows, the only weapon capable of piercing the great king of evil's defenses. However, the reunion was tragically short. The moment Zelda revealed her true identity, the protective magic surrounding her was broken. Ganondorf, who had been watching from his floating fortress, sensed the resonance of the Triforce of Wisdom. A crystal prison of dark energy materialized around Zelda, and she was whisked away into the sky. Ganondorf's voice boomed through the temple, mocking Link and daring him to enter the castle to reclaim the princess and the final pieces of the Triforce. Link stood alone in the empty temple, the weight of the entire world now resting solely on his courage. He had the medallions, he had the Master Sword, and he had the light arrows. The time for exploration and growth was over. The time for the final confrontation had begun. As Part 3 concludes, the pieces are set for the endgame. Link has moved through the elements of forest, fire, water, shadow, and spirit, proving himself worthy of the title Hero of Time. He has seen the faces of his friends as sages and the face of the princess as a survivor. The journey that began in a small treehouse in the Kokiri forest has led him to the gates of a dark god's palace. The Kingdom of Hyrule is at its breaking point, and the fate of the timeline hangs in the balance. Link walks toward the floating castle, the Master Sword glowing with a holy light, ready to face the man who stole his childhood and his kingdom. The infiltration of Ganon's castle was the final, desperate ascent of the Hero of Time into the heart of the world's corruption. As Link approached the site where Hyrule Castle once stood, he found only a gaping abyss of fire and molten rock. Through the combined power of the 6 sages he had awakened, a bridge of pure light was manifested across the chasm, allowing him to step onto the grounds of the dark fortress. The castle was not merely a building, but a metaphysical anchor for Ganondorf's rule, protected by 6 powerful barriers, each themed after the elements of the temples Link had conquered. To reach the central tower, Link had to delve into these subchambers, using the skills and items he had gathered across his journey to dispel the shadows of the forest, fire, water, shadow, spirit, and light. With each barrier shattered, the dark aura surrounding the central spire weakened until, finally, the path to the great king of evil was laid bare. The climb up the central tower was a grueling test of endurance, accompanied by the haunting, rhythmic sound of a pipe organ echoing from the highest chamber. With every flight of stairs, the music grew louder, more oppressive, and more triumphant. This was Ganondorf's final psychological weapon, the sound of a man who believed he had already won. When Link finally burst through the heavy doors of the highest room, he found Ganondorf seated at the organ, his back to the hero. Princess Zelda was suspended in a crystal prism above the center of the room, her light being slowly drained to fuel the King of Thieves. Ganondorf ceased his playing and stood, the Triforce of Power glowing brightly on the back of his hand. He admitted that he had underestimated Link's persistence, but he noted with predatory glee that by bringing the Triforce of Courage and the Triforce of Wisdom, held by Zelda, into his presence, Link had simplified the task of reuniting the Golden Relic. The battle that followed was a duel of godlike proportions. Ganondorf hovered in the air, raining down bolts of concentrated dark energy that Link had to deflect with the Master Sword in a high-stakes game of Dead Man's Volley. The sheer force of the impact caused the very stones of the tower to tremble. Whenever Ganondorf was momentarily stunned by his own reflected power, Link struck him with a light arrow, piercing his dark shroud and bringing him crashing to the floor. There, the Master Sword found its mark, carving into the flesh of the man who had brought Hyrule to ruin. The struggle was visceral and exhausting, a collision of three destinies that had been entwined since the dawn of time. Finally, with a desperate strike, Link brought the King of Evil to his knees, his dark magic sputtering and fading as he coughed up the blood of a mortal man. With his dying breath, Ganondorf used the last of his strength to trigger the collapse of the tower, intending to bury his enemies beneath tons of stone. Zelda was freed from her prison, and the two fled down the crumbling staircase in a frantic race against time. The escape was a chaotic blur of falling masonry and shifting corridors. Link protected Zelda from the remaining monsters in the rubble, his focus entirely on getting the princess to safety. As they reached the bottom and stepped out onto the scorched earth, the great tower of Ganon finally surrendered to gravity, collapsing into a heap of dust and twisted iron. For a few brief seconds, there was a profound, eerie silence over the ruins. Zelda expressed her relief, believing the nightmare was finally over and that the peace of Hyrule could be restored. But the silence was a lie. A terrifying rumble shook the ground as the ruins of the tower erupted. From the dust emerged Ganondorf, his physical body broken but his spirit fueled by an infinite, demonic rage. The Triforce of Power flared with a blinding, terrifying light, and the man transformed into a monstrous, dual-sword-wielding beast known as Ganon. This was the primal essence of Ganondorf's greed and hatred made manifest, a massive, pig-like demon of incredible strength. With a sweep of his blades, Ganon knocked the Master Sword from Link's hand, trapping it behind a wall of fire. Link was forced to fight the demon using his secondary weapons, dodging the massive swords and striking at Ganon's only weakness, his glowing tail. The battle was no longer a duel. It was a struggle for survival against a force of nature. Through courage and precision, Link managed to stun the beast long enough for the wall of fire to dissipate. He reclaimed the Master Sword, the blade glowing with the collective hope of the sages. Zelda used her power to restrain the demon, pinning him to the ground with beams of holy light. Link leaped into the air and delivered the final blow, plunging the Master Sword deep into Ganon's skull. The demon let out a final, earth-shattering roar as the light of the blade purified the darkness within him. This was the moment of the Great Seal. Zelda called upon the six sages, who opened a gateway to the void. Ganondorf, returned to his human form but still burning with hatred, was pulled into the portal. As the gateway closed, he cursed the sages and the hero, vowing that as long as the Triforce remained, his descendants would return to wash the land in blood. With Ganondorf sealed in the void, the sky over Hyrule finally cleared. The bruised purple clouds vanished, replaced by a soft, golden dawn. Link and Zelda stood together on a floating island in the sky, looking down at the world they had saved. But the victory was bittersweet. Zelda realized that to truly fix the world, she had to correct the timeline she had helped break 7 years ago. She turned to Link and thanked him for his sacrifice, acknowledging that he had lost his childhood to save her kingdom. She used the Ocarina of Time to play the Zelda's lullaby, casting a spell that would send Link back through the years to the moment before they had ever met. She wanted to give him back the life he had lost, even if it meant he would return to a world that would never know his name or the deeds he had performed. The transition was a silent, swirling blur of blue light. Link found himself standing once again in the courtyard of the Temple of Time. He was a child again, his hands small and his body light. He looked at the Master Sword resting in the pedestal, undisturbed. He looked at the Triforce of Courage, which still glowed faintly on the back of his hand, the only proof that his journey had actually happened. Navi, her duty to the hero finished, flew through the high window of the temple and vanished into the sky, leaving Link alone in the silence. The hero of time was gone, and in his place was a boy who knew too much and had seen too much, standing at the beginning of a history that had already happened in another life. As Part 4 concludes, the legendary split in the timeline occurs. In one world, the Kingdom of Hyrule begins the slow process of rebuilding under the guidance of the sages. In the other, Link travels to the castle to meet Princess Zelda for the first time, warning her of the disaster to come before Ganondorf can ever touch the Triforce. This choice by Zelda changed everything, creating a ripple effect that would define the Zelda series for decades. Link had saved the world, but he had become a ghost in his own time. The legend of the hero was finished, but the story of the boy was just beginning. The aftermath of the Great Seal created a metaphysical paradox that fractured the history of Hyrule into three distinct branches, a concept known in the lore as the timeline split. In the world Link left behind, the adult timeline, the kingdom began a long, arduous process of healing. The people celebrated the disappearance of the great king of evil, and the sages remained in their ethereal realm to watch over the land. However, this world was now a kingdom without a hero. Because Zelda had sent Link back to his childhood, the legendary bloodline of the hero of time was physically removed from that era. This would eventually lead to the tragedy of the Great Flood centuries later, as when Ganondorf eventually broke his seal, no hero appeared to stop him, forcing the goddesses to sink the kingdom beneath the waves. But for Link, the boy who had seen the end of the world, his reality was now anchored in the child timeline, a world of sunlight and unburdened potential where the fires of Ganon's castle had never been lit. Link stood in the Temple of Time as a child, the weight of the Master Sword no longer dragging at his side, but the memories of his battles pressing heavily on his mind. His first action was to fulfill the purpose of his return. He traveled to Hyrule Castle to meet the young Princess Zelda. This meeting was fundamentally different from their first encounter. Instead of two children plotting a desperate heist for the spiritual stones, Link stood before her as a veteran of a war that had not yet happened. Using the Triforce of Courage, which had traveled back with him, as proof of his claims, he warned Zelda and the King of Hyrule about Ganondorf's true intentions. This preemptive strike changed history. Ganondorf was captured by the Royal Guard before he could ever enter the Sacred Realm, leading to his botched execution at the Arbiter's grounds and his eventual banishment to the Twilight Realm. Link had successfully prevented the apocalypse, but in doing so, he had erased his own heroic legacy. This success brought about a profound personal crisis for Link. He was a celebrated hero in a future that no longer existed, and a common forest boy in a present where his greatest deeds were secrets known only to a princess. Furthermore, he faced a deep, gnawing loneliness. Navi, his constant companion through the darkness of the temples and the fires of Ganon's tower, had left him the moment they returned to the past. Without a fairy, Link felt adrift, caught between his Hylian heritage and his Kokiri upbringing. He could not return to the forest and pretend to be a child among children who would never age, and he could not stay in the castle as a soldier when he had the spirit of a master swordsman in the body of a 10-year-old. Driven by a desire to find his lost friend and perhaps find a place where he belonged, Link took his horse, Epona, and rode into the mysterious fog of the Lost Woods, leaving Hyrule behind. The lore of this period is deeply melancholic. It is believed that Link wandered for months, searching for Navi, until he was led into the parallel world of Tamina. His adventures there in Majora's Mask were a surreal reflection of his internal struggle, a world facing its own three-day apocalypse where Link had to heal the souls of others to heal his own. But even after saving Tamina, Link's ultimate fate remained tied to the land of Hyrule. According to historical records and the spirits encountered in later ages, Link eventually returned to his homeland. He grew to adulthood once more, likely serving as a knight in the Hylian army, passing down the advanced combat techniques he had mastered during his time as the hero of time. He married and had a family, ensuring that the blood of the hero would persist, but he lived a life of quiet obscurity. The true tragedy of Link's life was revealed centuries later in the era of Twilight Princess. When the next hero arose, he was met by a spectral entity known as the Hero's Shade, a towering, skeletal warrior clad in rusted, ancient armor. This spirit was revealed to be the ghost of the Hero of Time himself. Despite his victories, the Hero of Time had died with lingering regrets. He was a man who had saved the world twice, yet his name had been forgotten by the history books because of the timeline reset. His greatest regret was that he was never able to pass on the hidden skills of his legendary swordsmanship to a successor. He wandered the borderlands between life and death as a golden wolf, unable to find peace until he could find someone worthy of his knowledge. The interaction between the Hero's Shade and his descendant is one of the most emotional points in the entire Zelda timeline. The Shade teaches the new Link techniques like the ending blow and the great spin, his movements still retaining the grace and power of the warrior who once struck down Ganon. Through these lessons, the Hero of Time was finally able to find the validation he was denied in life. He realized that even if the people did not remember his name, his spirit lived on through his lineage and his duty. When the final lesson was taught, the Shade stood tall and declared that he had finally eased his regrets. He vanished into the light, finally allowed to rest in the heavens alongside the goddesses he had served so faithfully. The legacy of the Hero of Time also left a permanent mark on the royal family. The Ocarina of Time and the Song of Time became the kingdom's most sacred treasures, used as a reminder of the boy who could command the flow of years. The Temple of Time was eventually abandoned as the kingdom's center moved, but it remained a holy site, a place where the Master Sword slept in eternal silence, waiting for the next time evil would rise. The legend of the boy in green became a folktale in some parts of Hyrule, a story told to children about a hero who appeared from the forest to fight the shadows, though the details of the sages and the 7-year sleep were lost to the mists of antiquity. As Part 5 concludes, we see that the story of Ocarina of Time is as much about the cost of heroism as it is about the victory itself. Link saved Hyrule, but the price was his own identity and his own history. He became a ghost that haunted the timeline, a silent guardian whose sacrifice allowed others to live in a world where his struggle never had to happen. The silence of the Kokiri forest and the ruins of the Temple of Time are the monuments to a hero who gave everything so that the sun could rise on a peaceful tomorrow. The Hero of Time was gone, but the echo of his ocarina still hummed in the wind, a melody of courage that would never truly fade. The secret history of the Sheikah, the shadow folk of Hyrule, represents the darker substrate upon which the Golden Kingdom was built. While the Hylian royal family stood as the public face of divine rule, the Sheikah operated in the periphery, performing the necessary, often brutal work required to maintain the peace. The Shadow Temple and the bottom of the well in Kakariko village are the primary physical testaments to this hidden legacy. To understand the lore of Ocarina of Time, one must acknowledge that the prosperity Link saw in the market was bought with the blood and silence of the Sheikah's hidden wars. During the fierce Hyrulean civil war that preceded Link's birth, the Sheikah served as the king's intelligence and black ops force. They were the shadows of the Hylians, and the Shadow Temple was their base of operations, a place where the enemies of the crown were brought to be judged and, more often than not, disappeared into the darkness. The architecture of the Shadow Temple is fundamentally different from any other site in Hyrule. While the Forest Temple is a twisted mansion and the Fire Temple is a cavernous prison, the Shadow Temple is a sophisticated, psychological meat grinder. It is filled with devices of torture and execution. Massive falling guillotines, spinning scythes, and dead-hand entities that represent the restless, grasping remains of those who died in agony. The temple was built to be impenetrable to anyone without the lens of truth, a Sheikah artifact that allows the user to see through the illusions and fake walls used to gaslight intruders. This reflects the Sheikah philosophy. The truth is a weapon, and reality is often a mask. The fact that this temple is located directly beneath the village graveyard is no accident. It served as a conveyor belt between the living world of royal decree and the silent world of the dead. The lore of the bottom of the well provides a more localized look at this brutality. Before Link's era, a man who could see the truth lived in the house that sat atop the well. This man was likely a high-ranking Sheikah or a prisoner whose eyes were opened through horrific means. The well is a literal and metaphorical drain for the village's secrets. When Link descended into its depths as a child, he found a labyrinth of blood-smeared floors and wooden crosses where bodies had been hung. This was not the work of Ganon, but the work of the kingdom itself. The presence of the Bongo Bongo entity, a massive, disembodied shadow spirit with severed hands, is believed to be the manifestation of a high-profile criminal or a traitorous Sheikah who was executed by the state. His hands were cut off to prevent him from casting spells or using weapons, and his head was removed to silence his voice. By defeating him, Link wasn't just clearing a dungeon. He was purging a centuries-old stain of state-sponsored violence. The tragedy of the Sheikah is their near extinction by the time Link begins his journey. By the era of Ocarina of Time, Impa is essentially the last of her kind. The Sheikah had been decimated by the very wars they helped the king win. Their devotion was so absolute that they effectively worked themselves into the grave. This is why Kokiri village was open to the public. It was once a private Sheikah stronghold, but as their numbers dwindled, Impa decided to share the space with the refugees of the Civil War. This transition from a secret fortress to a peaceful village is a microcosm of the Hylian struggle, the attempt to bury a violent past under the guise of a peaceful present. However, as the Shadow Beast's escape proved, the past in Hyrule has a way of clawing its way back to the surface when the light of the king begins to flicker. Impa's role as the Sage of Shadow is a culmination of this generational burden. She is the bridge between the old world of shadows and the new world that Link is trying to save. Her stoicism is a product of the Sheikah training, which demands the suppression of emotion in favor of duty. When she leads Zelda into hiding during the 7-year gap, she is utilizing the ancient Sheikah techniques of disguise and evasion. It is Impa who trains Zelda to become Sheik, teaching her how to move like a shadow and hide her royal bloodline behind the mask of a survivor. This training was not just for protection, it was a psychological hardening. Zelda had to stop being a princess and start being a Sheikah to survive in a world ruled by Ganondorf. The wisdom Zelda gained was tempered in the fires of Sheikah pragmatism. The connection between the Sheikah and the lens of truth is central to the game's theme of perspective. Throughout his journey, Link is told that things are not as they seem. The Sheikah knew this better than anyone. They understood that the great king of evil was not just an external threat, but a reflection of the darkness that exists in all men. The Shadow Temple was designed to force a person to confront their own fears of death and betrayal. When Link uses the lens, he is seeing the world through Sheikah eyes, a world where every wall might be a lie and every floor might be a trap. This perspective was necessary for the hero of time, as Ganondorf's rule was built on the foundation of the very shadows the Sheikah had spent centuries managing. As Part 6 concludes, we realize that the Legend of Zelda is built upon a foundation of unseen sacrifices. The Sheikah provided the infrastructure of the hero's success. The ocarina, the hidden skills, the temples, and the guardians, only to fade into the background of history. They are the silent witnesses to the cycle of the Triforce. The Shadow Temple remains as a grim monument to the price of a golden age. It serves as a reminder that even in a world of magic and goddesses, there is a cost to keeping the darkness at bay. Link's victory was only possible because he was willing to descend into the places where the light of the sun could not reach, acknowledging the shadows so that he might eventually banish them. The legacy of the Sheikah would eventually see a resurgence in the distant future of Breath of the Wild, where their technology replaced their shadows, but in the era of Ocarina of Time, they were a dying whisper of a more brutal age. They were the ones who knew the truth about the royal family, the truth about the well, and the truth about the hero. As Impa joins the other sages in the Sacred Realm, the Sheikah's era of physical service to Hyrule effectively ends, leaving behind only the cold, stone corridors of the Shadow Temple and a single, crying eye to watch over the graves of Kokiri. The cultural history of the Gerudo and the rise of Ganondorf Dragmire represents one of the most complex and tragic threads in the tapestry of Hyrulean lore. The Gerudo are a race of elite warriors and thieves who inhabit the harsh, unforgiving climate of the Gerudo Desert, a vast expanse of shifting sands and lethal heat, separated from the fertile plains of Hyrule by the sheer cliffs of the Gerudo Valley. According to their ancient biological law, the race consists entirely of women, with a single male born only once every 100 years. By the immutable law of their tribe, this male is destined from birth to be their king. Ganondorf was that child, born into a world of scarcity and hardship. While the Hylians basked in the lush, green bounty of the fields and the cool waters of Zora's domain, the Gerudo suffered under the wind that brings death. A scorching gale that parches the land by day and freezes it by night. This environmental disparity is the foundational motivation for Ganondorf's resentment. He did not initially seek to destroy the world, but to claim the prosperity of Hyrule for a people who had been left to starve in the dust. Ganondorf was raised by the twin witches, Kum and Kotake, who were practitioners of the dark arts and high-ranking advisors within the tribe. Under their tutelage, Ganondorf's natural ambition was twisted into a cold, calculating thirst for absolute power. They taught him that the Gerudo's poverty was a deliberate insult from the Hylian royal family, and that the only way to secure the future of his people was to seize the Triforce. As Ganondorf grew, he became a master of both the sword and sorcery, a man of immense physical presence and terrifying magical potential. He was not a mindless beast, but a diplomat and a king who played the long game. During the Hyrulean Civil War, he kept the Gerudo neutral, allowing the other races to exhaust themselves so that he could step in as a loyal ally to the king of Hyrule once the dust settled. This false oath of fealty gave him the access he needed to the castle, where he could begin searching for the keys to the sacred realm. However, the lore suggests that the Gerudo tribe was not a monolith of evil. Many Gerudo, such as Nabooru, viewed Ganondorf's methods with growing horror. Nabooru, the second-in-command and a self-described lone wolf thief, realized that her king was losing his humanity in his pursuit of the divine relic. She saw that he was no longer stealing to provide for his people, but to satiate his own burgeoning ego. This created a secret schism within the desert. While the rank-and-file guards remained loyal to the crown of the desert, Nabooru sought to undermine Ganondorf's plans from within. This internal resistance is why she sought the silver gauntlets in the Spirit Temple. She hoped to use their power to challenge Ganondorf before he could ascend to the sacred realm. The tragedy of Nabooru is that she was captured and brainwashed by Kum and Kotake, forced to serve the very man she tried to stop for 7 years, until Link eventually freed her spirit. The Spirit Temple, located within the colossal statue of the Desert Colossus, is the spiritual heart of the Gerudo culture. Unlike the temples of Hyrule, which often celebrate the light and the goddesses, the Spirit Temple is a place of ancestral worship and trial. It is a monument to the desert's harsh beauty, filled with symbols of cobras and the sun. The temple's layout, requiring the intervention of both a child and an adult, suggests that the Gerudo believed wisdom was something that had to be cultivated over a lifetime of hardship. For Ganondorf, the temple was a secondary objective, a place to hide his surrogate mothers and secure his western flank. But for the culture of the Gerudo, the temple represented their soul, a soul that Ganondorf effectively sold to the darkness when he touched the Triforce. The transformation of the Gerudo during the 7-year skip is one of the most overlooked aspects of the lore. When Ganondorf became the great king of evil, he did not bring his people into a new golden age of desert prosperity. Instead, he largely abandoned them. He moved his base of operations to the center of Hyrule, building his floating fortress over the ruins of the castle. The Gerudo remained in the desert, becoming more isolated and militaristic. They became the jailers of the wasteland, guarding the Gerudo's fortress and capturing any who dared to enter their territory. The lore implies that Ganondorf's gift to his people was merely the permission to be as cruel as he was. By the time Link reached the desert as an adult, the Gerudo were a race of elite warriors who had perfected the art of combat, yet they lived in a state of perpetual tension, caught between their loyalty to their king and the visible decay of the world he had created. Ganondorf's rise to power is a cautionary tale about the corruption of legitimate grievances. His desire to save his people from the death wind was real, but his refusal to accept the limitations of his mortality led him to become the very thing he hated, a tyrant who looked down on the weak. When he finally touched the Triforce in the sacred realm, the relic reacted to his heart. Because he believed that power was the only thing that mattered, the Triforce shattered, leaving him with only the Triforce of power. This fragment amplified his darkest traits, turning a flawed king into a demonic god. The man who wanted to change the wind ended up becoming a storm that threatened to extinguish all life. The eventual fate of the Gerudo in the wake of Ganondorf's defeat is a story of quiet redemption. Following the Great Seal, the tribe moved away from the worship of their King of Thieves. In the centuries that followed, the Gerudo would distance themselves from the legacy of Ganondorf, eventually becoming the staunch allies of the Hylian royal family seen in later eras. They would remember him as a calamity or a great evil that once shared their blood, but they would no longer allow a single male to dictate their destiny. The law of the 100-Year King was effectively broken by the Hero of Time, as the Gerudo realized that a leader who seeks only power is a leader who will eventually devour his own people. As Part 7 concludes, the sand of the desert has settled over the ruins of the Spirit Temple. The drums of the Gerudo have fallen silent, and the wind that brings death has been calmed by the restoration of the sages. Ganondorf's legacy as the king of the Gerudo is a scar on the history of the desert, a reminder that even the most noble intentions can be warped by the pursuit of the divine. Link's journey through the wasteland was not just a quest to awaken a sage, but a witnessing of a culture that had been betrayed by its own savior. The King of Thieves was gone, but the desert remained, and the Gerudo would have to learn to survive without a king for the first time in 1,000 years. The nature of the Triforce and the transformation of the Sacred Realm represent the metaphysical heart of the Zelda mythos, serving as the ultimate objective for every player in the cosmic game of Hyrule. The Triforce is not a sentient being, nor is it a weapon. It is the essence of the goddesses, a physical manifestation of the laws that govern reality. Because it was left behind by the creators who departed for the heavens, it is a power intended for mortals, functioning as a silent judge of the soul. The Sacred Realm was originally a mirror of the world, a golden land of flowing light and infinite peace that acted as a sanctuary for this divine relic. However, the lore of Ocarina of Time reveals a terrifying instability in this arrangement. The Sacred Realm has no inherent form of its own. It is a heart mirror, meaning its climate, geography, and inhabitants are a direct reflection of the spirit of the first person to touch the Triforce after the seals are broken. When the young and unprepared Link pulled the Master Sword, he inadvertently cleared the path for Ganondorf to enter this sanctum. The moment Ganondorf's hand made contact with the golden triangles, the Sacred Realm underwent a violent and instantaneous metamorphosis. The golden clouds turned to a bruised, necrotic purple. The holy waters became rivers of blood or molten lead, and the peaceful spirits of the realm were twisted into the hideous monsters that would eventually spill out into Hyrule. This transformed space became the Dark World, a literal manifestation of Ganondorf's malice, greed, and thirst for dominance. The lore posits that the 7 years Link spent in stasis were not just for his physical growth, but were the time required for Ganondorf to fully terraform the afterlife into a throne room for his new, demonic empire. The most critical turning point in the lore is the Great Shattering of the Triforce. The ancient legends of the sages warned that if a person whose heart was out of balance touched the relic, it would shatter into 3 separate pieces. To hold the true force in its entirety, one must possess a perfect equilibrium of power, wisdom, and courage. Ganondorf, a man consumed by the desire for strength, did not meet this criteria. Consequently, the Triforce of Wisdom and the Triforce of Courage vanished from the Sacred Realm, seeking refuge in the souls of those chosen by the goddesses. This left Ganondorf with only the Triforce of Power. While this fragment was enough to make him an immortal sorcerer king, it also marked him as a failure in the eyes of the divine law. He was a god of a broken world, ruling over a fragment of the power he actually sought. The Triforce of Courage, which nested itself within the soul of Link, is perhaps the most mysterious of the 3. It did not grant Link magical spells or physical invulnerability. Instead, it acted as a spiritual battery that allowed him to endure the impossible. It gave a young boy the mental fortitude to stand before a god and the physical stamina to navigate the layered hell of the temples. In the lore, courage is defined as the ability to act in the face of absolute despair. This piece of the Triforce is what allowed Link to remain the hero, even when he was stripped of his childhood and his home. It is a passive power that reacts to the presence of evil, glowing with a resonant light when the Master Sword is drawn or when Ganon is near. It is the light of the soul that refuses to be extinguished by the darkness of the dark world. In contrast, the Triforce of Wisdom, held by Princess Zelda, granted her the sight of the goddess. This power allowed her to see through the fog of time, granting her the prophetic dreams that initiated the quest. Wisdom in Hyrule is not just knowledge, but the ability to perceive the interconnectedness of all things, the past, the present, and the potential futures. This is why Zelda was able to guide Link through the persona of Sheik. Her fragment allowed her to stay one step ahead of Ganondorf's scouts and to know exactly which melodies would open the paths for the hero. However, wisdom is also a burden. It forced Zelda to realize the inevitable tragedy of the timeline split. She knew that by saving the world, she was fated to lose her friend. Her fragment gave her the clarity to make the ultimate sacrifice, placing the needs of the kingdom above the desires of her own heart. The interaction between these three pieces creates the resonance of the Triforce. When the three holders are in close proximity, the marks on their hands glow with an intense, painful heat. This is the relic's attempt to reunite itself. During the final battle in Ganon's tower, the resonance was at its peak. Ganondorf used the power of his fragment to create a vacuum that pulled the other pieces toward him, nearly succeeding in reforming the true force. This is the central tension of the Zelda series. The pieces want to be whole, but as long as they are whole, the world is at risk of being reshaped by whoever is strong enough to claim them. The sage's ultimate solution, sealing Ganondorf in the void, was a desperate attempt to keep the pieces separated, effectively locking the power away so that wisdom and courage could exist in a world of peace. The transformation of the sacred realm also had a profound effect on the Master Sword. As the blade of evil's bane, the sword acts as a thermometer for the state of the Triforce. When Ganondorf ruled, the blade's power was the only thing that could pierce the barriers of the dark world. The sword is tied to the sacred realm. It is the anchor that holds the door of time shut. When Link returned the sword to the pedestal at the end of the journey, he wasn't just putting away a weapon. He was resealing the heart of Hyrule. He was ensuring that the mirror of the sacred realm would return to its golden state, reflecting the peace of a kingdom that had finally found its balance. As Part 8 concludes, we see that the Triforce is the ultimate source of both Hyrule's glory and its suffering. It is a beautiful, golden trap that lures the ambitious to their doom and demands everything from the righteous. The sacred realm, once a paradise, served as a 7-year prison for a boy and a 7-year playground for a monster. The legacy of the Triforce in Ocarina of Time is the realization that power is never truly owned. It is only borrowed, and the interest is paid in the years of a hero's life. The golden triangles remain, silent and gleaming, waiting for the next era when the balance of the world will inevitably tilt once again toward the shadow. The role of the sages and the celestial architecture of the Chamber of Sages represent the structural support system of reality in Hyrule. While the hero of time is the active force of change, the sages are the passive anchors that maintain the world's metaphysical boundaries. The Chamber of Sages, also known as the Temple of Light, is located at the absolute center of the sacred realm. It is the only part of that dimension that remained untouched by Ganondorf's corruption, protected by the ancient power of Roru, the Sage of Light. This chamber exists outside of conventional time and space, serving as a crystalline hub where the spiritual energies of Hyrule's different regions converge. Each sage is a representative of a specific elemental force: forest, fire, water, shadow, spirit, and light. And their awakening is not just a political restoration, but a literal retuning of the world's frequency. A sage is not merely a leader. They are individuals with a latent divine resonance who must undergo a transformative experience to reclaim their ancient roles. In the lore of Ocarina of Time, the awakening of a sage usually requires a sacrifice of their mortal life or, at the very least, their presence in the physical world. When Saria, Darunia, Ruto, Impa, and Nabooru awakened, they effectively ceased to be ordinary citizens of Hyrule. They transitioned into a state of semi-divinity, existing as spirits who watch over their respective temples. This is why, after their temples were cleared, they did not return to their homes to celebrate with Link. Instead, They retreated to the Chamber of Sages to pool their power. Their individual medallions, the Forest, Fire, Water, Shadow, and Spirit medallions, act as keys that Link uses to channel their collective strength to break the seals on Ganon's castle. The architecture of the chamber reflects this elemental harmony. It is a circular hall with 6 distinct platforms, each glowing with the color and symbol of its corresponding sage. When the sages are gathered, they create a seal of light that is capable of containing even a wielder of the Triforce of Power. This seal is the only force in the universe strong enough to banish Ganondorf to the void, a realm of absolute nothingness between dimensions. The sages are the guardians of the flow of time, and their collective consciousness allows them to perceive the various branches of history. This is why Roru was able to keep Link in stasis for 7 years. He was managing the hero's biological clock within a space where time does not exist, ensuring that Link would emerge at the exact moment the world needed him most. The history of the sages is deeply tied to the construction of the Temple of Time. In the ancient past, long before Link was born, the sages of that era, including Roru, realized that the sacred realm was too vulnerable. They built the Temple of Time as a physical gateway, using the Master Sword as the final lock. Roru chose to remain within the Temple of Light in the sacred realm, becoming a living seal to watch over the Triforce from the inside. While the other sages lived out their lives in Hyrule, their spirits waiting to be reincarnated when the need arose. The sages Link awakens are these reincarnations, descendants of the original line who carry the spark of the ancient guardians. This is why Zelda, as the 7th sage, is so critical. She is the leader who coordinates their power and serves as the bridge between the mortal world and the divine chamber. However, the sages also represent a profound sense of loss. For Link, the awakening of his friends was a series of permanent goodbyes. Every time a medallion was earned, a bridge to his past was burned. Saria, his closest childhood companion, could no longer play with him in the woods. Darunia, his sworn brother, was now a distant celestial entity. The sages are the silenced ones of Ocarina of Time. They have found their purpose, but they have lost their place in the sun. This reinforces the game's theme of the end of childhood. To save the world, everyone, not just the hero, must grow up and accept a role that is larger and more lonely than the one they imagined. The Chamber of Sages is a cold, beautiful palace of duty, where the personal desires of the individuals are surrendered to the survival of the kingdom. The power of the sages is most visibly demonstrated during the final battle and the subsequent ending. When Ganon is defeated, it is the sages who perform the Great Seal. They manifest as 6 streaks of colored light that descend from the heavens, surrounding the demon and tearing open the gateway to the void. This act is the ultimate expression of the law of the goddesses being enforced. Once the seal is complete, the sages are seen one last time, standing atop the summit of Death Mountain as spirits, looking down at the celebration in Lon Lon Ranch. They are ghosts at their own party, invisible to the people they saved, existing only in the memories of Link and Zelda. This image is the final statement on the nature of the sage. They are the foundations of a house who can never enter the rooms they support. The lore also hints at the missing sages, or the ancient sages who were killed by Ganondorf. In the Water Temple and the Shadow Temple, there are indications that previous guardians tried and failed to stop the King of Evil's ascent. The fact that Roru is the only ancient sage left suggests that Ganondorf's first act upon entering the sacred realm was a systematic slaughter of the spiritual hierarchy. This is why Link's mission to awaken new sages was so urgent. The spiritual defense system of Hyrule had been flatlined. Link wasn't just finding friends. He was rebuilding a shattered government of the soul. Without the sages, the Triforce would have no containment, and the world would have dissolved into the chaos of the Dark World permanently. As Part 9 concludes, we see that the sages are the silent heroes of the legend. They are the ones who provide the light that allows the hero to see and the arrows that allow the princess to strike. The Chamber of Sages remains as a beacon in the darkness of the sacred realm, a testament to the idea that order can always be restored if there are those willing to sacrifice their lives to hold the line. Link's journey through the temples was a process of gathering these scattered lights into a single, blinding sun. With the sages awakened and the King of Evil banished, the celestial architecture of Hyrule is once again in balance. But the final note of the song has yet to be played, the note that sends the hero back to the beginning. The conclusion of the Ocarina of Time saga is not found in the clashing of swords or the sealing of demons, but in the profound silence that follows the restoration of a broken world. Part 10 explores the ultimate legacy of the Hero of Time, a legacy that defined the very structure of the Legend of Zelda universe and established the myth of the hero as a recurring, inescapable cycle of history. When Princess Zelda played the final notes of the Ocarina of Time to send Link back to his childhood, she did more than just return a boy to his home. She effectively bifurcated the destiny of the entire world. This final chapter of the lore examines how the events of this single game became the Big Bang of the Zelda chronology, creating three distinct futures. The child timeline, where Link warned the king and prevented Ganon's rise. The adult timeline, where the kingdom was left without a hero and eventually drowned. And the downfall timeline, a hidden possibility where the hero failed, leading to the desperate wars of the original NES titles. The cultural impact of the Hero of Time within the world of Hyrule cannot be overstated. In the adult timeline, the memory of the boy in green became a religious icon. Because he disappeared so suddenly, sent back in time by Zelda, the people of Hyrule lived in a state of perpetual expectation, waiting for him to return whenever shadows grew long. This expectation became a tragic trap. When Ganondorf eventually broke the sage's seal centuries later, the people prayed for the Hero of Time to appear, but he could not, for he no longer existed in that flow of time. This led to the Great Flood, where the goddesses themselves had to intervene to preserve the world. The image of the hero, captured in stained glass and ancient tapestries in the underwater Hyrule of the Wind Waker, shows that Link's 7-year journey became the standard by which all future heroism would be measured. He was the true hero, and every Link who followed was merely an echo of his courage. In the child timeline, the legacy was more personal and melancholic. As we explored in the story of the hero's shade, Link lived a life of quiet service, but his heart was always partially left in the future he had erased. The hidden skills he developed were his way of ensuring that his struggle wasn't entirely in vain. He became a ghost that haunted the bloodline, a reminder that the price of peace is often anonymity. This timeline produced a Hyrule that was more grounded and militaristic, eventually leading to the events of Twilight Princess. Here, the Master Sword remained in the forest, a secret weapon known only to a few, and the Temple of Time crumbled into a beautiful ruin, its purpose as a gateway forgotten by all but the spirits of the sages. Link's sacrifice in this timeline was his own glory. He chose to be a forgotten soldier so that his friends could grow up in a world that never knew the fear of Ganon's tower. The Triforce itself was forever changed by the events of Ocarina of Time. Before this era, it was a distant mythological relic. After Link and Ganondorf touched it, it became an active participant in the world's suffering. The curse of the Demon King was born here. Ganondorf's final vow as he was pulled into the void ensured that an incarnation of his hatred would forever follow those with the blood of the goddess and the soul of the hero. This established the eternal recurrence that defines the series. The relationship between Link, Zelda, and Ganon is a celestial triangle that can never be truly broken, only managed. Ocarina of Time revealed that these three individuals are the pillars of the world, and their conflicts are the engine that drives the history of Hyrule forward. The sages also left a permanent mark on the land's geography and spirituality. The locations of the temples, the forest, the volcano, the lake, the desert, and the graveyard became the holy sites of Hyrule. Even in games set thousands of years later, these areas remain centers of spiritual power. The sages' medallions became symbols of authority and divine right. The lore suggests that the spirits of Saria, Darunia, and the others eventually merged with the land itself, their essences becoming the spirits of the elements that future heroes would call upon. They are the watchers in the woods and the fires of the mountain, proving that while individuals die, the roles they play in the cosmic drama are eternal. The final image of Ocarina of Time is the meeting in the courtyard, the young Link standing before the young Zelda, a look of recognition in her eyes. This moment is the ultimate summary of the game's philosophy. That time is a circle, but our choices within that circle matter. Link's journey was a coming-of-age story for an entire kingdom. Hyrule began the game as a naive, divided land and ended it as a unified, battle-hardened nation. The Song of Time is the anthem of this transition. It is a melody of beginnings and endings, of the joy of discovery and the pain of departure. It reminds us that every hello in the forest leads to a goodbye at the temple, and that the only way to save the future is to honor the past. As we conclude this 10-part exploration of the Ocarina of Time lore, we see that the game is the sacred scripture of the Zelda franchise. It provided the origin stories for the races, the artifacts, and the conflicts that would sustain dozens of sequels. But more importantly, it provided a meditation on the nature of heroism. A hero is not someone who wins. A hero is someone who is willing to walk into the darkness, knowing they might not come back the same or at all. Link's journey was a tragedy wrapped in a victory, a story of a boy who saved the world and lost his childhood in the process. The silence of the Kokiri forest is his monument, and the light of the morning sun over Hyrule is his reward. The legend is finished. The hero of time has found his rest, whether in the golden fields of the afterlife or the quiet meadows of a peaceful childhood. The Master Sword sleeps, the ocarina is silent, and the fog has settled over the lost woods. But whenever the wind whistles through the trees or the rain falls over Lake Hylia, the people of Hyrule feel a faint, lingering presence. A shadow of a boy in green, a reminder that as long as there is evil in the world, there will always be a soul brave enough to pull the sword from the stone. The history is written, the timeline is split, and the dream of the goddesses continues.